Hi, everyone. Mitch here with Chris. Ron absent this week, but here in spirit. It is week 12 of the college football season. And, a lot of the big names are off. It's not as many big matchups, but, of course, just a couple of weeks away from that big Thanksgiving weekend of games. And, of course, then after that, the championship games. And we'll know who's in the playoff. Chris, how's it going?
Yeah, it's going well. Yeah, it's the time of the year that we all wait for, the chaos that starts to unfold in these conferences. The SEC, the first one that comes to mind, any one of 7 teams could make the SEC championship game. And there's a lot of mixing around as teams are trying to shuffle around in the playoff standings. So it's going to be an interesting week for sure.
Be interesting to see how the playoffs and, the SEC is, kind of beating each other up this year affects future scheduling and the way that these things are set up. My guess is be some big changes, but we will see. But we got to get right into it and get going. It's as they say, the show must go on. We start off in Evanston, where Northwestern takes on Ohio State. Site of one of my worst beats of all time, when Northwestern 1 year tried to lateral the ball around on the final play of the game, down by single digits, and ended up lateraling it right into the end zone, and an Ohio State player fell on it on the game's final play to not cover the spread. But this year, Northwestern getting a lot more points than that, 28.5 here against the Buckeyes.
Yeah, and I'm going to roll with the over here. I was leaning towards Ohio State because I think there's a couple teams that are in that 5 through 12 range that probably aren't going to win their conference championship, that probably want style points to give themselves a better spot in the 5 through 12 matchups. I think Ohio State's one of those teams, but they do have a bit of a look-ahead spot with Indiana on deck in a game that's going to go a big way to determining who's going to make the Big Ten title game. So I think that Ohio State scores enough points that Northwestern can contribute 1 or 2 scores and get us over this total. But that's probably where I want to lean here.
I'm going to take the bundle of points here with Northwestern. I like the way they defend the run, and one of the top run defenses in the nation, 19th best in rushing yards against at just under 109 per game. The passing, defense certainly needs a little help, but still, opposing QBs completing just over 60% of their passes against Northwestern. I think it's good enough, getting 4 touchdowns and change. I'm going to roll with the Cats in this one. Got Texas taking on Arkansas. This is like a traditional old-style Big 8 conference game. Now in the SEC, they kind of went through the ringer and came back out on the other side. But it is Texas against Arkansas. To me, it's the Horns. I believe that we saw exactly who they are and who we thought they were and all that other good stuff. And they headed to Fayetteville for this one. And I just think that Arkansas, this is the game they get way up for. And I think they beat them outright on the money line. We got about plus 400 here with Arkansas, and I think this is the type of spot where it's just a really bad spot. Arkansas has fallen flat on their face at home a few times this year, getting racked by LSU 34-10, and getting beat last time we saw them against Ole Miss 63-31. It was a lot closer than the score, Chris. I think that I like the Hogs to bounce back in this one. They've had some time, some serious soul searching to do, identify where the problems might be, and fill some of those holes.
Yeah, I'm going to take a shot on Arkansas on the points as well. I think that Texas is just a case of just keep winning and avoid that stumble spot. There's no need for style points here. You just got to stay the course and make sure that you don't trip. And Arkansas is fully capable of making Arkansas trip. Let's be realistic. But I just like what Taylor Green has brought to this offense. Brings a dual threat ability that the Hogs haven't had in the past. And he's been taking care of the football, which I think is all you can really ask for Arkansas. As long as they don't stumble and turn it over, I think they'll be able to do just fine. They can run the football. They can air it out with some of the best offenses in the country. I'm going to take Arkansas on the 13.5 points as well.
Next up, we go to the ACC, where Pitt takes on Clemson. Pitt was undefeated just a few weeks ago. Now 7-2. Clemson also 7-2. A few weeks ago, they were talking ACC title game. Still a shot at it. They're going to need some help to get there, though. Clemson, a double-digit road favorite at Pitt.
Yeah, I know it's not the most ideal spot, but I think I have to lay the points with Clemson here. I just trust their offense a little bit more. Pitt, we're starting to see that the luck ran out with the Panthers. There were a few spots where you could easily argue this Pitt team that was 7-0 could have easily been below 500 with the rally against Cincinnati, the rally against West Virginia, escaping against Cal, escaping against North Carolina, and now we've seen the cracks start to show against SMU and Virginia. Clemson, they've had a down last couple of weeks by their own scoring standards from earlier in the season, but this is still an offense that can put up 40, 50 points in a game when called upon. Pitt's defense at times has been susceptible, so I'm going to take Clemson. I'm going to lay the 10 points here.
Yeah, I'm going to have to take your word for it. You just look like a man who seems to know a lot about crack showing. I think that I'm going to roll with the Tigers in this one as well. I just like the way that they're playing, and I like the way they really played against Virginia Tech. And I think with their backs to the wall, they can't afford to lose another game. Dabo Swinney, generally a pretty good coach in this time of the year. I thought the Louisville game was really surprising, and I think Pitt's numbers are a little bit inflated, And I think when you look at where teams rank nationally in each of the different categories, I think scheduling isn't factored into that, and I think Pitt. As we've seen the last couple of weeks, the crashing down to earth and with a big thud. We head to Boulder, where Colorado, we coming up against Utah. Utah near missed last week against BYU. It's been a little bit of a rough season here for the Utes. Really un-Kyle Whittingham-like, but we are starting to see them gain their footing, and we saw them play pretty tough against a pretty good BYU team. Of course, Colorado exceeding all expectations. I was dead wrong about this team when it came to wins and losses. I think a little bit, I may have been dead wrong about them, but I think I've also been dead wrong about a lot of their opponents, too, that I thought were going to take care of business against them. It all started with that play against Baylor, which really turned their season around. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, I'm going to lean towards Colorado. I know this Utah defense is probably going to be one of the better units that Colorado will see, not just so far this season, but the rest of the way. But Colorado's done a good job of, doing what they can control and taking care of business that way. They're keeping Shedeur upright, which is the most important thing for them. And they're winning games by margin. Now, Utah, I think it's just one of those spots where Utah, if they, can't move the ball and you have to punt it away to this Colorado team, Colorado eventually starts to pull away. They score on the possessions when you're getting 3 and outs from Utah. I think they win this one by 2 touchdowns. I'm going to take Colorado laying the points.
Yeah, Utah definitely gained some confidence last week, and I do like a lot of the things that Colorado is doing. But let's be honest here. If I take Colorado, then it's not going to give anybody in the comments anything nasty to say about me and just generalizations about me, not just about my college football picking, but they normally like to take it and make it personal as well. But so I'm going to roll with Utah one more time. We've only got a couple more weeks left of this because, this will be it for Shedeur at Colorado. And once Travis Hunter leaves, we know where this program's headed. So I'm going to roll with Utah in this one. I think Colorado, though, wouldn't be surprised if they win. I just think it's going to be a little bit more competitive than this number. We got Penn State taking on Purdue. Penn State, I believe, the most overrated team now in the nation. There's just a lot of overrated teams, I guess. Or, I don't know if it's a lot of overrated teams. Maybe it's just a lot of mediocrity, and there's no, clear-cut number one. This season. And I think, maybe it is a good year for the expanded playoff. And, Penn State up against Purdue. Last week, Ohio State was my top play of the week. It's rare that I pick a 38-point favorite to be my top play and really consider it a lock, a lock. Normally, friends will call me. People say, who do you really like today? I'm like, well, I'm not really sure, whatever. It's like, this is the way I'm leaning or whatever. I was like, lock, Ohio State. But, the thing is, Purdue's terrible, but Penn State has really struggled where they shouldn't be struggling. A lot of times this season, it's a lot of points to be laying with the Penn State team that just seems anemic at times. I don't know. They get an awful lot of good calls at home in their favor, though. And, God, Purdue is so bad. I mean, they're so bad. It really is a tough one. I'm gonna roll with the under.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Penn State here. I said it last week with Penn State when they were playing Washington. As long as it's not Ohio State on the other side, I think James Franklin is just fine. The thing about Purdue, they've already played three teams that are currently seeded in the college football playoff, and they've been outscored 147 to 6. Excuse me, 146 to 7 in those three games. So Purdue, I think, has just waved the white flag. I think they're over it. I think they're just playing out the string. This is a great spot for Penn State to get those style points I was mentioning earlier. So give me Penn State laying the big number.
Got Notre Dame taking on Virginia. Boy, Notre Dame seems to have a lot of home games this season. There's another one up against UVA. UVA is, they played pretty tough in spots. They're not like they're one of those teams. Like they're not a really good team, but they're also not a pushover. And the Irish come into this one at 8-1, so probably headed towards a playoff spot with a pretty light schedule and no championship game. What do you think of this one, Chris?
Yeah, I'm going to take a shot with Virginia in the points. Like you said, they have been competitive. Last time we saw Virginia as a sizable underdog, they were on the road at Clemson, and they covered the 20.5 points. Lost that game by 17. I think we could see something similar here, especially since you're getting up and over 3 touchdowns. If this time is around 20.5, maybe I could be talked into Notre Dame, but I think this one's 38-17 Irish. I think Virginia sneaks in the back door here. Notre Dame, I think, might actually have one eye on Army next week. So I'll take I'll take Virginia plus the points against Notre Dame.
Yeah, I think I'm with you here on Virginia as well. I just think that they at this point they've been in it, and they had those 3 consecutive losses, but they were all by closer numbers than this. And Virginia has covered now in 5 of their last 6 games. The one game they didn't cover was the one that they were favored in, and that was against North Carolina, and where they got blown out of the building. But I think in this one, I think Virginia can at least hold their own. So I'm going to take I'm going to take Virginia in this one. We've got up next. It is Boston College versus SMU. SMU, of course, now looking at a potential playoff spot, a spot in the ACC championship game. 18.5-point favorites over Boston College. That is a big number. I am not a Rhett Lashley fan, so we'll have to see how it shakes out. But the defense has held up for the most part, but the pass defense has just been absolutely hideous for SMU. It's the run defense that's kept them in it. But Boston College, they can run the football and they can't pass. Meanwhile, for SMU, their offense across the board pretty good. And I think I think it's going to be a tougher game, but I just think in the end, SMU just too much firepower. I'm going to go with the Ponies. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, I'm on the Ponies as well. Boston College announcing they're switching from Thomas Castellanos at quarterback to Grayson James. And James has been very good this season. He did help with that win for BC over Western Kentucky earlier this season. But, Boston College, I think, is just up against it here. The last time we saw them on the road, it was a 42-21 loss to Virginia Tech. Lost their 2 conference road games by double digits. SMU, another team, again, I'm going to use the word style points. I think they're going to need to pick up a big win here to really, put a stamp on the rest of their season and make a case to the playoff committee. So they can't win by, these small margins. They got to win emphatically, and I think they do here. I'm going to take SMU.
Yeah, I think that's what you got to go for those style points because a lot of these SEC teams still have to play each other. We got LSU against Florida up next. Speaking of 2 SEC teams, this is one of those rivalry games that a lot of people don't look at this as a rivalry, but it most certainly is. When you have an East team and a West team that play each other every single year, it is a rivalry, and that's what this one is. What do you think?
Yeah, this was a tough one for me, but I think I'm going to go back to LSU here. I don't know what the status of DJ Lagway is. I don't know if he's playing banged up. I think this is an LSU team that really wants to get the bad taste out of their mouths after a beatdown loss to Alabama. I know going to the Swamp is not an easy place to go on the road and win, but I'll take LSU here. I think they win this one going away.
For me, it just seems that with this number, they're almost begging you to take LSU. And Florida has really improved as the season's gone on. they've had their share of troubles, and the game against Texas, obviously not one that went their way. But you look at their schedule: Tennessee, Georgia, and Texas in three of their last four games. This is actually probably a little bit of a step down in competition from those three. So the one game that they had to step down in between was against Kentucky, and they won that one 48-20. I think Florida's got a good chance to win this outright. They hate LSU's guts, so I expect to see a big turnout for this game in the Swamp as well. Next up, we've got Mizzou taking on South Carolina. I think a little bit of the luster off Missouri this season. They started the season ranked in the top 10. I felt they were a little bit overrated coming in. Good coach, good quarterback, some good key players, but not quite the depth that we're looking for from a top 10 ranked team. South Carolina, I think, Shane Beamer was on the hot seat, coming into this season. A lot of people thought he was gone. That shellacking that he put on Kentucky certainly put a lot of confidence in his team. Think about it. They beat Alabama in that game. It was nip and tuck all the way. We're talking possible playoff spot here for South Carolina. That's how good they've been. Last week against a Vandy team that's been giving everybody fits, they come through in that one. South Carolina's only losses here this season are LSU, Mississippi, Ole Miss, and Alabama. So not a bad three. What are you thinking in this one?
Yeah, and the losses to Alabama and LSU by a combined 5 points. So definitely think that South Carolina's earned their respect. And I think I have to lay it here with South Carolina. I was trying to find a way to get on Missouri here because I thought maybe let down for South Carolina after you beat Vandy on the road, you clinch bowl eligibility. But Missouri has just been just so inconsistent. They might be the worst 7-2 team I think I've ever seen. So give me South Carolina here. I think they win this one by 2 scores.
Yeah, I just can't get behind Drew Pine. He's just not my guy, and I think that South Carolina, hats off to them for rallying the troops and really putting it together. These guys play hard, and South Carolina is just an odd program. About 25 years ago when Lou Holtz took over as head coach, this team had only been to 3 bowl games in their history. And it's hard to believe, they've become a pretty respectable program. I don't love laying 12.5 with a team that plays this style that they play, but I think they're certainly capable of covering it. I'm going to roll with the Gamecocks in that one. Next up, Boise State versus San Jose State. I'm not even sure how this type of game even hits the board here, but it's not on the blue turf of Boise. It's at San Jose State, who is bowl eligible at 6-3. Boise, like most Heisman candidate teams, he hasn't had as much success recently. Is this the game where we see maybe another run at the Heisman?
Yeah, I think so. I think the 3+ touchdowns for Ashton Genty at -150 is probably still worth a look, but I gotta go with Boise State here. Lean towards the over as well, because season long Boise State's had issues stopping the pass, and that's where San Jose State excels. But at the end of the day, it's this Boise State attack against the San Jose State defense. Boise State's, we were talking about the run game, how they lead the country in yards per carry, second in rushing yards per game, but all of a sudden the passing game with Maddox Madsen has started to pick up as well, and I think Boise State can get this one done by at least 2 touchdowns, if not more. So give me Boise State as they continue to try to put a stamp on that 12 spot in the college football playoff.
I'm going to take a shot here with San Jose State plus the points. I think Boise probably wins the game, but I like San Jose to cover. This is the total in this thing is 61.5. So, they're expecting a track meet. It could be one of these, 10-point games in the 10. Still looking pretty good with San Jose, who can really throw the football. Their defense isn't going to stop anybody. Their running game is not going to scare anybody, but I think they can pass on Boise and put some points on the board. So laying almost 2 touchdowns, probably not in my vocabulary for this one. We've got Kansas State taking on Arizona State. Arizona State, doing a nice job this season, playing some pretty hard-nosed football. K-State, I have to say, a little to the disappointing side, and I think that this one obviously going to go a long way in the Big 12. To me, it's just I've seen Arizona State in recent weeks just really gut out these wins. They haven't had the toughest of schedule in recent weeks, but they've really gutted out these games. The Kansas game, the Utah game, the Oak State game, in the tornado, 2.5 hour delay in that one. Even the Cincinnati game, it was more competitive than the scoreboard. While Kansas State coming off that loss against Houston 2 weeks back, it's like I loved Houston in that game. To me, it's just I think Kansas State is a little too inconsistent, and even coming off of some of these other games, 31-28 against Colorado, 29-27 against Kansas. Once again, I see it closer than the number here at 9. I'm going to take the dog, Arizona State.
Yeah, I think the only thing holding me off of Arizona State was the health of Cam Scatabo, running back for Arizona State. I want to make sure that he's good to go, but it looks like he is. But I still think I want to lean towards the over as well. For me, I think this one's just a little bit too low. Any number I get to with these two teams keeps hitting the at least low to mid 50s, and I think Kansas State can definitely put some points on the board against this Arizona State defense that still gave up 31 to UCF, gave up 21 to Oklahoma State, 24 to Cincinnati, gave up 30 plus to Texas Tech and Kansas. But Kansas State's been susceptible as well. They only beat Kansas by 2. They gave up 28 to Colorado. So I expect points in this one. So I'm taking the over 50.
Next up, we head to Madison, where the Wisconsin Badgers take on the Oregon Ducks in Big Ten action. The Ducks 10-0, 2 wins away from a perfect season, at least regular season, and a trip to the Big Ten championship game, which is odd, but that's where they will be. Meanwhile, the Badgers looked like they had maybe taken some steps forward, knocking off some of the lesser teams in the conference, but then when they played the better teams in the conference, oh, man, it looks a lot like that Alabama game all over again. And that's pretty much where we are here with Wisconsin. They've come full circle. They've got the bookends. Back on September 14th, the home loss to Alabama 42-10, and then in front of those poor kids in the hospital in Iowa. Oh, my God. I think the kids had to close the shades for that one. It was 42-10. You don't want your kids seeing that one, man. It was nothing pretty about that, but a good time for the Iowa fans nonetheless. I think that, the Badgers, Luke Fickell, we've seen him in the Big Ten before this season, before last season when he was the interim coach at Ohio State. He did not have a lot of luck there. I think there are certain coaches that are just better in certain spots. And like Shaka Smart in basketball, great college coach, great at VCU, great at Marquette. Texas, not so great, just not a great spot for him. I think the same thing with Luke Fickell. Ohio State, Wisconsin, not so great. Cincinnati, great. Would have been a playoff team, in Cincinnati probably with him as the coach, or close to it in that Big 12. Anyways, I'm going to roll with Oregon in this one. I think by the time they play the jump around, Oregon's going to be doing backflips, man.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to lean towards Oregon as well. I was hoping it was going to dip under 2 touchdowns. It still might. It was at 14.5, and that's kind of where I was thinking maybe you take Wisconsin. But the more I look at it and the more that's hanging around that 2 touchdown mark, I think I got to take the Ducks because they just keep finding a way. The only teams that have really given them an issue since the Boise State game back in week 2 was Ohio State. Outside of that, it's been pretty much dominance everywhere else from Oregon, and I just don't see Wisconsin stepping in front of the Ducks and keeping this one close, even at Camp Randall. So, give me Oregon here as well. Landed points.
We head between the hedges in Athens as Georgia takes on Tennessee in a big-time SEC matchup, and of course Carson Beck having all sorts of troubles. 126th ranked out of 134 teams in interceptions thrown. Oh, man, a couple of them were just bad tips and bounces, but, man, some of these have been real miserable. Chris?
Yeah, that's why I'm looking at the under here, especially if Nico Iamaleava can't go for Tennessee. I want to make sure that he's going because I think he was dealing with a concussion last week. I know he was injured, but yeah, if he can't go, that Tennessee offense, which was already not doing anything special in SEC play, takes a step down. Georgia's offense has felt a little bit broken with Carson Beck throwing picks left and right, but these are still 2 great defenses as well. I think this one's going to be one of those knockdown, drag-out SEC matchups that's decided in the trenches. Give me the under.
It's tough to lay 10.5 in a game like this because it is going to be so low scoring. The total set at 48.5, I think it's closer to 23. In my book, I think 16-9 is probably a type game, or it could be 16-6. It could even be 16-3 or, somewhere in that range. But I don't know, man. 10.5 in this game. It's almost like they're begging for Tennessee action, giving them this gigantic number against a Georgia team that, probably, I think you could say, is it Kirby Smart's best? Maybe not, but, you look at the schedule. Clemson, Kentucky, Alabama, Auburn, Texas, Florida, and at Ole Miss. That the Ole Miss and the Texas game and the Alabama game were all on the road this year. That is a bad draw. And now you got Tennessee at home. I don't know. Kirby Smart seems to really get up for these type of games. I'm going to take the Dogs in this one. Our final game on the card is BYU taking on Kansas in Big 12 action. BYU, this is the thing, but the Big 12, I don't think can take advantage of it. But unless they lose the championship game, the way it generally is looking is that, a undefeated Big 12 champion could leave the door open for a second Big 12 team to get in. So if BYU were to make it to the championship game and lose, a second Big 12 team could sneak into the playoffs. So that's why it's so big to make it to that, because at undefeated for the full season, you can make an argument for a playoff spot regardless, right? I mean, it's going to be tough to keep a 11-1 team out, or 12-1 that lost in the championship game over a team that lost regular season games regardless. And, the team that beats them will automatically be in. But BYU, once again, just a 3-point favorite here. I mean, we have seen these guys lightly favored all season long, yet 7-2 against the number, up against a Kansas team that beat Kansas State, or lost to Kansas State by 2, and then pounded Iowa State last week. And, a couple weeks ago, we were talking about how it was Iowa State, BYU in the championship game. Not looking like that anymore. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But I like BYU in this one. I think they just continue to roll on. It's like this team just continues to be ignored, continue to be shut down. All they continue to do is win football games. They're playing solid defense, which I always like. They're playing pretty boring offense, but they're not beating themselves. BYU has traditionally been one of the most penalized teams in the nation, but not this season, 20th in penalties, which is really, really good for them. I'm going to take BYU in this one. I think they win it pretty easily.
I'm going to take a shot on Kansas. 2-6 in their last 8 games, but they have a +7 point difference over that span. They've just been really unlucky. They've been in a lot of close games, and their four losses on the road have been decided by an average of 4 points per game. So I think they can keep this one close. This Kansas team's woken up in recent weeks. They've covered in 3 straight. And they like to run the football. And this Kansas rush offense has really woken up in the last 3 weeks. And that's the area where BYU's defense is most susceptible, is on the ground. So if this line especially gets up to around 3.5 or 4, I'll like it a lot more with Kansas. So I'll take Kansas in the points.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone, for joining us. Chris, another week of college football. Hopefully next week we have a full panel. And then, of course, creeping up on Thanksgiving week, where we've got the Egg Bowl, we've got all those matchups. A few of them have moved around this season, just the way that with the conference realignment. Like, they've already played the Apple Cup, which has been pretty steady there. But Texas A&M is now resumed. Will be there. Florida State. Just a lot of good games. So excited to see it. And of course, the Iron Bowl as well. Anything else you want to add?
Now I'm excited for all the rivalry games, some of the trophies that we talk about. Unfortunately, Florida Rosedale has already been played for, but that's fine. We still got.
It's usually the Axe on that weekend.
Yeah, usually the Axe. We can't talk about the Little Pig anymore. Unfortunately, we got leave that one in the past. But
Little Pig is in the poke.
but we have. I think, do we have the Shillelagh still coming up?
No, I think they played that at Shillelagh already.
Oh no.
Yeah, Stanford, Notre Dame.
I thought what's Notre Dame USC? Is there one?
Oh, maybe that is the Shillelagh.
I thought it was.
Who the hell knows?
They've all got games to play. They've all got something to play for at this point. But I'm excited, especially that Thanksgiving card, like you mentioned. So it's crazy. It seems like we were just talking about week 1, and now we're talking about conference championships a couple weeks away.
Yeah, just like, in college hoops, of course, be sure to check us all out at Pick Dawgz, and, of course, Jay's NBA jam session, Chris's NHL wraparound, Ron's bank shot breakdown, and of course all the videos that we do every day at Pick Dawgz from our Pick Dawgz crew. And thanks everyone for joining us. Another week of college football and what's been an awesome season.